Go ahead.
Hi, guys. Hope you had a great Easter break. We're starting our next unit here of sorts, our next week. Keep up with those meditations and questions of the days. Make sure you get those in. Some of you still have outstanding work that hasn't been turned in. You have to turn that in because it's a required class. You're going to be doing a lot of work this summer, unfortunately, if you don't get your work in. So you have to get that in, okay? To start, I looked at our plans and the curriculum, and this is what we were going to do this week, what I'm going to tell you now. One of those thought-provoking things. Unfortunately, we're not in the circle, but if you can imagine that we were in our circle together, and that's what, atmosphere this would take place in. We talk about life and life choices that we have. All of us love to have choices. We want, the more choices, the better. And we talk about making poor choices and good choices. This springtime always reminds me of a period and experience that I went through that was not a good choice. And I want to share that with you because at the end, you're going to have an assignment then, a paper, and I'll outline that in just a minute. But in order to know where I'm coming from, I want you to think about where you're at the spring semester here. When I was a senior in high school, spring semester, I was out for track. And as a senior, of course, you have your senioritis, that type of thing. And that particular spring was a really nice spring. It was early, and the weather turned, and it was just gorgeous out. And in track season, I had some good meets and some not so good meets. And I knew that I wasn't fast enough to qualify. I was running the Open 400. And some of you I know that are in track understand that. Gordon, I'm thinking of you in particular. And I was not fast enough. I was in that 52.5 range. I wasn't fast enough to make it in an Open 400 to state. Getting to state in Minnesota was a big deal. It was really, really hard. Nobody goes to state. So what we did as a team is we stacked what's called our Sprint Med Relay team. And we have and the Sprint Med is a 200, a 200, a 400, and an 800. And I was going to be running the 400. And I'll make this fast. We went to you guys would call it your divisional meet. It was our region meet. It was in a town called Monticello. And they had a different type track of sorts. It was a 400 track, but it was a little skinnier. It was interesting. So it was a longer home stretch. Anyway, we got there, and our event was about 2/3 of the way through, and we got lined up in our sequence. I was number 3, and so I stepped off at the start, and the 200 runner went over to the other side, and our starter was a guy by the name of Clint Fouquet. And he took off, and he had a great first leg. He handed it off to a kid named Tommy Eichhoff, who came around, and Tommy was a great. He was going to go to state in the Open 200, so he was really good. And so I saw it, and I'm like, oh, pressure's on. He passed me the baton, and the only thing I was afraid of initially, looking back, was to drop it, because if we dropped it, we'd be done, and I could not live with myself. But anyway, I took off. It was a clean exchange, and I just ran, and I knew I was pumped. I wanted to just do the best that I ever could in my life for those guys. I made the curve, hit the homestand, and I remember my head was just pounding, and all I could see was Tommy Sexton down there, and he was a great 800 runner. He was going to run about a 2-minute 800, so I knew I just can't screw up. Don't drop the baton. And I remember I handed it to him. I rolled over then on the edge of the track and just, I was out of it. And I remember watching him come around the first leg. Did really well. He was right with the pack. And then on the home stretch, he kind of kicked it in, and we took first. You had to take first to go to state, and he did it. And so on the way home on the bus, we were just, high-five, and you guys can relate. I've never gotten, to go to state's impossible. And so we were pretty jacked about that. And it was a Friday, and we got out of school, and that day was absolutely gorgeous. It was beautiful out, about 75, 80 degrees. It was in May. It was beautiful. And it was our last Friday dance of the year, school dance. I'm not a big dancer. You guys should know that. I don't cut a rug. So I got back, and people were saying, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? And one of the kids I was with, Clint Fouquet, said, hey, you want to come on out and go water skiing? And I said, oh, I'd love to. And so we changed, and a couple other guys said, are you going to come to the dance after? And I said, yeah, probably. But I wanted to go skiing first. And now is the rest of the story. On the way out to his boat, he had a boat. It was great. All set up, and I had my skiing wetsuit in the trunk. I stopped at I always told you I'd be honest with you. I stopped at a place called Crossroads Liquor and picked up a 12-pack of Pabst Blue Ribbon that was on sale. Now, at that time, the drinking age was younger and all that. I'm not making excuses. I knew I shouldn't have been doing that, but I did. And went out to the lake. He was waiting. And it was the most spectacular night. The leaves were just coming out on the trees. Nobody's dock was out. So you could ski right next to the bank. And it was so cool to spray right in on the trees. Just trash them. And the sun was just setting. And it was glass. And it was like a thick water. Those of you that water ski know what I'm talking about. And Clint did a great job. We finished up and I changed and had that cooler in the back seat. And I said, what are you going to do? He said, I'm going to the dance. I said, oh, okay, I'll follow you. And picked up another buddy. Mike Justin was his name. At his house and went to the dance. And Clint went in. Everybody went in. I stayed out with Mike in the car and talked about the race and how exciting it was. And I remember putting on the cassette of Boston. Boston. It was just awesome. If you've never listened to it, you have to listen to Boston. Long time. It was wonderful. And we were sitting there for a while, and I cracked a beer in my hand, and I looked to my left, and I saw a guy walking in the parking lot across from the school. He had a blue windbreaker on, and I just saw him, and he's looking in different cars, walking around. And he came up to my car, and he took his hand and he wrapped it on the window to open the window, to drop it. And I'm like, well, who the heck's this guy? So I dropped the window and I said, yes, sir, can I help you? And he opened his jacket and you could see that he was a cop. And he looked and he said, what are you doing? I said, not much, just sitting here listening to tunes with my buddy, drinking a beer. And he said, I wasn't worried because, I didn't think I was really doing anything wrong. What's the big deal? And he took out a piece of paper, a list of names on his pad. And he said, I need ID. And I gave him my ID. And I said, officer, keep up the good work. I thought, nothing was going to happen. And then he looked on the list and he said, oh, I see you're qualified to go to the state track meet. Right then I knew I made the most catastrophic choice decision of my life. Because then I understood what was going on. Slow learner. And I said, yeah, I did. He said, oh, well, you're not going now. And I followed him into school, and the principal was there, assistant principal and AD. And all three of them looked at me with this just down, depressed look. And, they explained that I was suspended. And I'm not going to track to the state meet. More importantly than that, you had to go with the relay team that placed at the regional meet. As a result, those three guys aren't going either. And when I came out, they were there. They were at the dance, and they knew what had happened. And if looks could kill, they would have killed me. But the look when I got home was the worst. My mother crying. You recall the story of the bridge with Halloween. My mother really was disappointed with that suspension and experience. And it took a long time for me to move forward from that experience. And those guys for years always gave me a jab when I'd see them in the summers. And they'd say, hey, it wasn't for you, that type of thing. Now they're really good about it. They don't talk about it. We've moved on. And it was a learning moment for me. It was one of the poorest choices I've ever made in my life. But it was a good one in that I reflect on it, especially this time of year, and move forward. And I share that story with you guys for twofold reasons. One, so you please, when I say make good choices, make good choices. I love you. Make good, safe choices. And number two, It's called life. We all make poor choices. Okay? Here's the paper 12 times Roman, full page, one side, due Monday the 20th, 1 o'clock. 1 p.m. Monday the 20th, this paper is due. The paper is entitled Choices. First part of the paper, what's a choice that you regret? Like I just conveyed to you. What's a choice you regret? And the second paragraph is what's a choice that you're pleased with and you're glad you made? For me, that second paragraph would be being able to teach you guys. That's the one that I was most proud of in terms of making a good choice. To experience life and share it with all of you. So, one side, double space, 12 times Roman, a poor choice you regret, and a choice you're proud of and you're glad that you did. Due Monday the 20th. That's our unit for this week. Look forward to Thursday's meditation. Love you guys. Have a great day.